us and victims of crime and of dedication to truth above all else. And we sure as hell know what that means. So,
good for her.
This is going to go in the canon of resignation letters.
Harry, I have a legal question for you, just for people who are curious.
I do, after all, have a JD.
Yes. And we just play lawyers on TV, and you're real. So there's been some question about, and I'm looking at this through the political lens as well, when Donald Trump put that another hysterical tweet out, because he's been, or truthing or whatever it's called now, but he's been very busy, very active on Truth Social with, very emphatic statements and more hysterical, in my opinion, as the days have gone on that platform. But last night, he said that he was basically calling for any pertinent information to be released by grand jury testimony, to be released by the courts and all of that. And from what I understand is that it seems to me like, that was a very lawyered statement, because there's a lot of pitfalls in there.
He doesn't put in pertinent on his own.
No, I don't think he knows what pertinent means. And so, pertinent to who or by whom? How is that determined? If it has to go before a judge, which that's my understanding, right? That grand jury,
that's right.
Unsealing that
material.
Basically, because it's by nature supposed to be secret. So a judge has to determine whether they're going to do that. Testimony is different than material, right? So that's just actual testimony. That's like, there are other things that are that could be grand jury materials that don't have to go before a judge. So there's a difference so it's even more narrow in scope what he's asking for. And then the other part is if a judge says no, because they look at the rule, right? Was it Rule 6E or something like that?
You're good.
Well,
you are good.
I should have gone to law school. I should have gone to law school. It's one of my biggest regrets in life, actually.
We all have in the last few years.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, under that rule, there's very specific exemptions for what the judge would look at, whether it applies. And like the public's right to know, or that the president's throwing a temper tantrum, that's not in the exceptions.
Or putting out a political firestorm is not there, right? Which they hope, right? They hope that the judge will refuse. So
because then they can use the judge as the
number
foil.
One point to make about the grand jury materials got nothing to do with what MAGA wants.
Right.
So that's the big thing.
Because Pam Bondi, because she could release, like, I think the other thing too is that difference here in what they put.
It was on her desk.
Right.
Then the dog ate it. Right.
But all those grand jury materials, which could be all kinds of things, I don't know, flight logs, it could be receipts, it could be bank statements, whatever, she could release right now. She has the power to do that. Right? It's like the evidence part.
If it's under a grand jury seal, you need a judge's order.
So there's no difference between testimony versus material?
If it's within the grand jury seal, that's correct.
Okay.
And also, when you're talking about a grand jury here, this is a grand jury that was looking into Jeffrey Epstein's wrongdoing.
That's right.
Okay. This was not a grand jury that was impaneled to look at all things, all people, all individuals who touched upon Jeffrey Epstein. They were launching a prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. And so this is kind of Trump's sleight of hand. He's saying, I want to release something that he doesn't have the sole power to release, number one. And number two, that isn't actually what MAGA is looking for.
And that's the key. That's the lawyer's 100% point. Okay, so let's go to what they're looking for. Let me ask you, this is a legal point, but it's really a political one. This reminds me a little of, remember the Signal story where Jeffrey Goldberg is on and the administration pushes back? And it was just made it sort of inevitable we were going to see that transcript. It just feels to me, but this is a political question more than legal, but that there's this hydraulic force, and one way or another, that notebook is coming out, and probably sooner than later. Do you guys agree?
Absolutely. Wall Street Journal never would have published that story unless they were prepared to take it to the next step. I mean, It is the Wall Street Journal, regardless of who owns it. They are a reputable newspaper and with journalistic standards. And so this isn't the National Enquirer. It's not the New York Post.
Right.
It is the Wall Street Journal.
And it's the news side of the
Correct,
journal,
not the opinion side. So, and even then. So I suspect that there is a drip that is going to become a much more formidable story after that. On top of the Senator Ron Wyden stuff. I mean, we saw that too.
The money stuff,
with the banking, treasury stuff.
The Wyden stuff to me feels like the thing that is the most like you can almost hold it in your hands. And it's also the thing that's gone the most under the radar because it's almost boring to hear about suspicious activity reports from banks. Yeah. But Wyden is actually, there are Republicans who, in some fairness, are like, well, where have Democrats been on this? But for Ron Wyden, he has actually, over the course of the last several years, been trying to do a literal follow the money trail. And he's been looking at thousands of whether it was wire transfers or other financial blueprints, basically, related to Epstein and the people who were paying him. And so for Wyden, who got access to these records, I think in the last year of the Biden administration, he's now coming back. And I think he quietly this week on the Hill was like, hey, by the way, we actually know where the threads for a client list could come from, whether or not this is written somewhere already or not. We could just write it on down if we look more into these records. And so when you talk about the tangible things that could actually come out, yes, the journal reporting is obviously a salacious new piece of this puzzle, but the Wyden banking stuff, I think, is one of the most tangible pieces. And then the other way that Congress, and this is a long shot, which is why I underscore the Wyden piece first, but they're trying to do what would be a bipartisan discharge petition that would basically compel Republican leadership, and it probably wouldn't happen before September because of how long everything has to age, but it would compel Republican leadership to bring to the floor some kind of bill that compels the Justice Department to release and be transparent on the Jeffrey Epstein case files. Now, they made another separate move on this so-called non-binding resolution late overnight before everyone left town this week. That's also something that you're probably not going to see hit the floor immediately. But I think the important thing to remember, if you only remember one thing about what Congress is doing on the Epstein files, is they actually have the votes to actually get stuff released here. But Johnson is squeezed right now because as much as he's talking about, we need transparency, why can't they explain this? He's not actually saying it that way. He's trying to be very diplomatic about it. And being diplomatic means not bringing this to the floor because Trump does not want it brought to the floor. And so that's sort of the reality check on Congress, is there's those two threads, I think, are the most tangible outcome things.
Yet, but he's moving incrementally, right? And unless and until the notebook comes out. And when it does, by the way, we're going to see a signature. It's going to sure look like Donald Trump's signature. It's somehow a simulacrum of pubic hair in a way we don't, that the Wall Street Journal had. But it's going to be gross. And his only defense then is going to be, this is, who you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
Well, listen, the defense that's coming out from him is from someone, right? He said, it's not me. I don't draw.
Right.
And that's not my language. I seem to remember that this is the same guy who bragged about grabbing women by their private parts on a hot mic. He didn't deny that he said that because it's on a hot mic. We all heard it.
Right.
So we know, and we were told that was, quote, locker room talk.
Could have gone that way now, but it's now too late for him, right?
He didn't, because it's just, he's in full Roy Cohn deny mode. But we also know, because I think it was the Washington Post or someone that showed this doodle that he did of the New York skyline that was auctioned off for $30,000. There was a news story about it. So he does, in fact, draw. So this whole thing, again, by him denying this, it's just digging himself in further. He could have just said, hey, that's, it was locker room talk, but he can't do that because he's been trying to also coffee boy his relationship with Epstein, saying, I don't know, that he's a creep. I don't really know him like that. When we all know it is well documented that they were very close best buds for over a decade. Epstein said so. Trump said he knew him for 15 years. Trump said that they like beautiful women. He likes them as much as I do, except he likes them on the younger side. I mean,
you said that in a 2002 quote.
Correct. So like he's not. It's like he doesn't live in the same reality that the rest of us do, and he forgets that everything lives forever on the internet. And so it's very easy to go back and just dismantle all of his BS excuses for this, which is why this situation continues to get worse.
That's true, but he's made it worse. He could say, look, in 2004, they did have a falling out. If he wanted to just say, this has basically been the Dershowitz line, I think the Clinton line, I got nothing to do with this creep anymore. The classic Washington maxim here in this situation is, get everything out and get it out immediately. Nothing could less describe Donald Trump. Lie about everything and lie immediately and weather the storm. But if we're right, and I saw 3 nods that it's coming out, there's a bad day of reckoning. All right, so it's not going away, as everyone said. I wanted to end, actually, back with you, Dave, because you made this really provocative point in your really good New York Times piece. My first thought was, where's David French on this? That the episode allows us to peer into the future of MAGA and see its potential crack up after Trump is gone. The movement could tear itself apart. Can you explain what you're saying there?
Yeah. So if you want to know the difference between Trump 2016 coalition and Trump 2024 coalition, Trump 2016 was, vast majority normie Republicans voting against Hillary Clinton. There were a lot of warnings about Trump, but we'd not experienced him. We had not experienced him as a president. Trump 2024, he did something really interesting. Imagine that you took every super disgruntled coalition in America, from sort of the center left all the way to the far right. And whether you're anti-vaccine or whether you're isolationist or whether you think there's a global pedophile conspiracy, all of the super disgruntled people, and said, you've got a home here under one condition, you bend the knee to me. Doesn't matter what you believe, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, pro-choice, pro-life, whatever it is, pro-Ukraine, anti-Ukraine, you can be in this coalition. And what you ended up with is he brought a bag of scorpions into the GOP. And after the head scorpion is gone, they're going to fall in on each other. And you actually already see it. You saw it in the run up to the Iran strikes. You had the isolationist wing, yes, really going at it with the more conventional Republican wing. You see it now in just all over the place. You've got Megyn Kelly wearing out Ben Shapiro on her show. You've got Tucker Carlson rebelling. You have Charlie Kirk first expressing concern, then saying trust the government. Then you have Alex Jones virtually crying. You have all of these figures just sort of all over the place. Candace Owens putting their feet to the fire. Other members of Congress coming on to support Trump. You can see the jockeying for position in real time because it has already dawned on some people. It's going to keep dawning on some people that actually Donald Trump's not eligible to run in 2028. He's a lame duck. And we know from all of American history that it is not too soon to start thinking about a successor, even in the first year of a president's second term. And so this is linked to that. This argument, this public fight, is absolutely linked to who is going to be the true MAGA standard bearer going forward.
You know who's been suspiciously quiet? Is J.D. Vance.
Except he said, let's let this notebook out.
That's about it. But he hasn't really been the attack dog, standing in the breach for Trump that a vice president would normally be in a situation when the head honcho is in trouble. He's very delicately approaching this, and I think we should pay attention because he obviously thinks he should be the heir apparent, and I think that there are very powerful, moneyed people, particularly the tech bro contingent, the Peter Thiel PayPal mafia guys that are grooming J.D. Vance to be the successor with their own nefarious plans for what this country should look like. I think you're looking at different factions within MAGA beginning to jockey for a position, to David's point, for the future here, because it is coming. And so I think we should just pay attention to how those people react.
Okay, man, it's not going away. We'll be talking about it more. I did want to move to what until Thursday seemed like a huge story to me, which was the reporting out of committee favorably and the apparent glide path to confirmation of Emile Beauvais, who, I've called the least qualified nominee in a generation and has, to me, just glaring terrible flaws, way more than a normal nominee might. Let's start with the Democrats, who did interesting stuff here anyway, and were not just bovine about it. They walked out trying to play the Epstein card, even with Beauvais. You had a real confrontation between Booker and Grassley, who, as best I can tell, was just breaking the rules by not respecting a point of order. So let's start here on the political side. Did you notice, or did it seem to you that the Dems were actually trying to make points with it, and any chance of succeeding with such an arcane topic as who becomes a Third Circuit Court of Appeal judge?
I mean, this is why the Judiciary Committee exists, right? When you've got 900 former DOJ lawyers saying you cannot confirm this guy to this position, it technically shouldn't matter what party you're in, but if Democrats were to take a stand,
fucking percent, pardon me.
I mean, no, of course. I mean, I come from a family of lawyers, right? You learned, you respect the courts and you respect the rule of law, right? So it feels that animating to me as well, Harry. And in addition to your lengthy resume, of course you'd have that reaction. But look, for Democrats, everyone likes to play this parlor game of like, well, does it translate politically? On this, it actually doesn't matter. Like, the base does want to see them taking a stand. And so watching them walk out of a committee hearing, which is a rare thing to do, watching Booker take that stand against Grassley for not allowing them to continue some point of debate over the topic of Bovey's nomination, all of that shows the fight. So there's your politics piece. But if ever there were an arcane issue or something that's siloed in the realm of like very DC, this would be the thing to take the stand on. And I think it actually fits this larger umbrella theme that I saw out of Congress this week, which was the erosion of bipartisan norms and the decorum that building functions on. Because technically, Congress shouldn't and doesn't really work unless it's acting in bipartisan fashion. And on everything from the Bovey nomination to the rescissions package that clawed back $9 billion in partisan fashion, all of that just underscores the way that bipartisanship is crumbling and falling by the wayside. And you've got top Trump administration officials, including Russ Vought over at OMB, saying that's exactly how we want it when it comes to appropriations and funding. And that has such trickle effects through the way that government works or doesn't here. So I think the Bovey nomination from a legal perspective is as massive a story as you say it is. But when you put it in the congressional realm, it tells a larger story about the way that Congress is just kind of faltering at this really pivotal moment, because the way that it was set up to function was A, to be bipartisan, and B, to respect these not cemented in rule of law, but like just decorum and etiquette